Hey there, and welcome to Your Worth Your Way, the podcast that's all about helping you understand that you are worthy of prioritizing your joy without feeling selfish or guilty. I'm Debbie Lucas, the Joy Alchemist, and each week I will be bringing you honest, heartfelt conversations with incredible guests, coaches, thought leaders, and soulful humans, all who will share their stories and insights on self-worth, confidence, personal growth, and how to create a life that feels authentically yours. This isn't about quick fixes or cookie cutter advice. It's about real talk, practical takeaways, and plenty of soulful inspiration to help you live life your way. So grab your favorite cuppa, get comfy, and let's dive into today's episode. So today I am joined by the incredible Renee Rendall, an eclectic witch and spiritual coach who brings a touch of Sagittarius energy to everything that she does. We're diving into the magic of mindset and how you absolutely deserve to create the life you deeply desire. She uses tarot and witchcraft to help you build the self-belief you need to live your most awesome life. And I'm so excited for you to hear about Renee's journey and her insights on living life her way. So welcome, Renee.
Hi, Debbie. Thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome. So what's lighting you up right now?
Oh, I love that question.
Mm.
Well, at this very moment in time, I'm actually preparing a new offering. Well, sort of new. It's part of a larger coaching package that I offer, but I have been developing a one-off session that dives into the basics of your astrology birth chart and your human design to help you get really clear on who you are and how you should be living your life to elevate your self-acceptance, and to really empower you to go your own way and, just like you said, live a joyful life that feels right to you.
I love that. And it's so exciting when you come up with something new and improved that you can, continue to support your clients with and even new clients. And I certainly know for me, like astrology and human design and understanding my chart and my, kind of my human design, which is manifester, was like game changing because it was
Hmm.
and game changing in a way, but also just affirming because
Yes.
it's about like how we tap into that intuition and the things that we already know in ourselves but we maybe just don't quite trust yet. So it's just like having that little extra nudge to go, yes, this is you, this is what your purpose is, this is how you function in life, because that's a lot what human design is. So
Yeah.
once I started embracing that made such a difference. So what an amazing offer and gift to the people that will work with you to be able to help them through that as well.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm not a weirdo. I'm not broken. I was born this way. This is how I am meant to be, and this is how I'm meant to shine. So I think it's really validating and really brings a deep sense of self-acceptance.
Yeah, I love that term validating as well because we don't need external validation, but it is a bit about just kind of like bringing it all into alignment and understanding ourselves better, isn't it?
Yeah, unless you're a Leo, then you need a little bit of external validation.
I love that. Yeah, I've not had many Leos in my life, but I've kind of just there's been things popping up recently, and I've kind of learned a lot about what Leos are all about. So it's really interesting. Okay, so tell us a little bit about your story, and I know a little bit about you, but obviously the listeners don't. So tell us your story and kind of what led to the work that you're doing right now.
I actually didn't discover witchcraft until I was 40 years old. So a lot of people dabble in witchcraft as teenagers, and they kind of like maybe keep it secret from their families, or they're just doing it with their friends. They're the classic weirdos at school, like the movie The Craft. But I didn't get into it until much later in life. I actually heard about modern witchcraft on an NPR news podcast, of all things, which I now realize was the perfect way for it to come to me because I was a grown woman. I consider myself to be an intellectual. I'm a skeptic still to this day. I like to get all the information and know the facts. And so to hear about this magical practice from women who were academics, published authors, university professors on a really reputable news source made it seem much more possible to me. It wasn't just I'm embarrassed to say now what I thought before, that it was just, a bunch of wackos like sitting inside a pyramid thinking that they could imagine something and it would appear in their life. It showed how this magical practice could be something that you could really bring to your modern life and have it be so empowering. So it came to me in just the right way at just the right time. I often wish that I would have discovered it a long time ago, but I wouldn't have been ready for it then. And so once I heard about it, it was actually my husband who said, "You're going to become a witch now, aren't you?" And I was like, "Oh, maybe." It took a good 9 months for that to sort of bubble up in my subconscious, kind of melt into my awareness. But once I started really studying, once I started looking at books and websites and online courses, I was immediately hooked. I was like, this is it. This is what I've always believed and never had a name for. It gave me permission to be, again, my most authentic self. It gave me permission to move from worrying about everyone else, which I think is something that a lot of women
Yeah.
experience, make sure that everybody else in your life is taken care of, to actually finally asking myself, what do I want? What makes me happy? And I am allowed to have and want those things. I deserve happiness and joy. And people will come to that realization through an infinite number of paths. But for me, it was witchcraft. That was what really turned on the light for me.
Oh, like everything you said, there's like, if people are watching the video on YouTube, if they're just listening, like I was like nodding my head. It was like absolutely. And yeah, I just love that because, as you said it, people can discover this for themselves in so many different ways. But coming back to kind of one of your points around like when you were ready, you had
Mhm.
you heard this when you were ready. And I'm a firm believer in divine timing. And there's often this saying, sometimes mostly used in kind of like religious terms of like when people are going through a challenging circumstance, people will say, God won't give you something that you're not strong enough to handle. I'm
Mhm.
paraphrasing. But I also always believe that the opposite is true, that, the universe or God or source, whatever you believe in, won't present you with opportunities, won't present you with information and like this next step to take unless you're ready for it. And the bit that you tapped into then, what this podcast is all about, is like you needed to be ready, you needed to feel worthy
Mhm.
of stepping into that, because I'm kind of working on some like social media posts and blogs and things just now about like self-worth and the importance of that and like low self-worth kind of being that bit that kind of constantly pulls you back. You maybe get so far, but if you've not got that self-worth and self-belief and the self-acceptance that you talk about, and we'll come on to that, you're never going to be able to truly step into that and sustain it as time
Mhm.
goes on. um so one of the things that you kind of spoke about was like, you had that moment where you kind of heard that podcast and it took a while for things to kind of like settle in and sink in and kind of integrate and become your way of living and being. Um, and I think that's often the case for a lot of people, like for us who've been on a spiritual and personal development journey, on a healing journey, we can sit here and say, oh, this is how you create the life you desire. This is how you manifest your dreams, but we don't always see that journey that we've come on, and how we've, and so I call myself the joy alchemist, and what alchemize means is you took, for me, it means taking the lessons and the blessings of our
Mhm.
past and our experiences and turning that into wisdom so that we can create that. So how has that kind of evolved for you over time? Because obviously, you were 14, and I always believe it's never too late to learn anything new or start anything new. You're never starting from scratch, as I say, you're starting from where you're at.
Yeah.
So kind of what was your journey up to that point, and why do you feel like you were ready at that point at the age of 40 to kind of step into this?
Yeah, prior to discovering witchcraft, I'd kind of bounced around a lot. I have redefined myself more times than I can count. I was an educator. I lived in Taiwan for a little while. I got remarried while I was there. I've moved a few times since then, Hawaii, and now here in Scotland. And early on in life, I had an experience that really took me off the track that I thought that I was on. And I just never really found my way back to a new purpose until that point, I was dealing with a lot of depression and anxiety, and had experienced some things like divorce and the death of my mother around the time of my Saturn return that were just like really overwhelming. And I was just kind of fumbling through life. I look back now, I can see how the universe had sort of nudged me in the right direction to end up where I am now, but there was there was a lack of purpose in my life after that initial experience. Um, and I can't, I, there is definitely, a link that somebody much wiser and higher, some entity higher than me can see to, find the direct path to where I am now, writing about witchcraft on a daily basis, offering tarot readings and spiritual coaching to people. But it just appeared in my life at the right moment. I always say that the universe, it knows the way, it knows the path, but it's only going to show you a little bit at a time. It's only going to light up
Yeah.
the next
Yeah.
step that you need to
It's it.
take, and everything else remains a mystery. So the more I learn to trust in that next step and not second guess myself, not put others' needs before mine. That's not to say that I don't still want to be of service
Yeah.
and to,
Yeah.
give to my family and my loved ones and things like that. But I was neglecting myself to the point that it was harmful to me and to the people that I loved. So it was really just kind of an accidental journey that completely opened my eyes. And it was like a huge bolt of lightning, that moment when I really started studying witchcraft. And the first big intention that I set for myself back in 2019 was to have my own business. I didn't know what that was going to look like.
Mhm.
I had no idea how it would end up, but I knew that that was where I needed to go. I just felt it so deeply that I was capable of, um, not needing a boss, not needing to work for the man, not spending all of my time and energy making someone else rich. I'm not making myself rich at the moment, but that I could focus that energy on being of service in a way that was unique to me. And again, it took me a while to figure out how that was all going to play out. But I just had to take it one step at a time.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your story and the vulnerability there. I think it's so important that other people can see us, owning our truth, owning our story, and showing up authentically. And I think there's so much in what you said there. So I'm going to kind of dissect that if I can remember everything. But the first bit that you were saying there about, like there were so many signs along the way. And I think, you obviously had some significant life events happening, which, it brings a lot of grief and sadness into our lives. But, even with those events, there's still a lot of kind of like external noise, the expectations of other people that really weighs heavy on most of us who are people pleasers, who've been
Mm-hmm.
conditioned into those kind of, those tendencies and roles. And I think like that, so being able to be present in the moment, and see the signs for what they are can be really challenging. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not until we start kind of waking up, as I would call it, and start kind of understanding that maybe there is more to life, maybe we are worth more, and our self-worth is inherent, that we can then start seeing that and actually taking action on that. And I love what you said about like only needing to know the next step, and that the universe or source or God, whatever you believe in, is only going to illuminate that next step. And so a lot of us want to know the full path. We want that sat nav that's given us the journey, and we know where our destination is. And in some ways, it's helpful to know where you want to go. That's always important. But like just knowing that next step, you couldn't memorize 100 turns to get to your
Uh-huh.
destination. You need to just know, like, after the third street, I'm turning left or I'm turning right. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, that's so, so important. And that was like a pivotal moment for me, and how I started kind of using my intuition was like, right, in this moment right now, what is in front of me in terms of like the opportunities, the things that I need to do, and what's going to take me closer to that, to my dream or my aspiration in whichever area of life I'm focusing on. And I think that's so important. And I think again, if you don't feel worthy, you're not going to trust your intuition because you're not going to trust yourself. And I think,
Hmm.
that whole bit around worth and self-trust and self-acceptance, accepting who you are, accepting your path, accepting, your destination in life and your soul's purpose in life, then, you're not going to feel quite comfortable in that kind of trusting your intuition. And I think, once you kind of find the tools and the resources or the ways that can help you to, whether that's astrology, whether that's, using magic, whether that's, using your tarot cards to find your purpose, to understand your purpose. And that's when the alignment starts taking place. And that's when the intuition comes in and you start kind of like taking that aligned action that moves you one step closer every time.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much work on self-worth, self-trust, self-belief that has to go into being able to step into your power and really begin to use your magic to be able to manipulate the energy around you to create change in your life. Um, I like to say what you believe is what you get.
Yes.
And I know for me personally, and as well for a lot of the clients that I've worked with, we have this idea of ourselves, of who we are, the roles that we fit into, what we are and aren't allowed to do. We have all these beliefs that we've created over our lives. And for so much of my life, I felt like I wasn't allowed to change that. I felt like I would always be this person who was unhappy and dissatisfied. And I was like, well, I just have to accept it. That's just who I am. Self-acceptance is not about like being okay with being miserable. Self-acceptance is about saying, right, this is where I'm at. These are the resources that I have available to me. And then it was witchcraft that said, okay, what do I have control over? How can I use my power to change this rather than just saying, well, I guess things are going to be crap forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, well, things are crap right now and I don't like it. But if I'm responsible for my energy, if I am creating the vibration that I put out into the world and that vibration is bringing my reality back to me, well, that's on me to change what I get. I have to take responsibility for my own happiness.
100%. And I think that's where, and no pun intended, or maybe it is pun intended, yeah, but that's the magic of
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
witchcraft or any of the divination tools, tarot cards, whatever
Hmm.
we're using, crystals, whatever it is. And it is absolutely about, like accepting that, we're taking responsibility, we're taking ownership of our energy, which
Hmm.
and like, that could be a whole 10 other podcast episodes when we just talk about working with energy. But like when you talk about using witchcraft as a path to self-empowerment, and you've mentioned they're working with energy. So um, tell us a little bit more about how you can use the energies and how you can incorporate that, maybe not necessarily specifically to witchcraft, but how you can incorporate using that in your daily life to kind of work with your own energy and to bring that into alignment.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Um, we have all these beautiful tools and materials in witchcraft, like you said, the crystals and the tarot cards and the herbs and all of that. And those are enhancements
Mhm.
to our magic, but the magic really comes from us. My first witchcraft teacher, Maggie Hazeman, said, magic works because you are magical. And it all starts in the mind and it all comes from within you. So all of these other tools that we incorporate, they're sort of like accessories
Mhm.
to our magic. And it's
Mhm.
about learning to cultivate your own energy. One of my favorite tools for this is affirmations.
Aha.
I'm such a nerd for affirmations. I love words in general. I'm a writer. I majored in English. I used to be an English teacher. So words are really powerful to me. But that is such a great way to access your energy if you're somebody who likes to work with words because it's not something that you have to buy from a store. It comes from your own mind. And you can use them all day, every day, and nobody ever has to know.
Yeah.
It can all happen in your head. I love to say them out loud,
Mhm.
and I love to write them down, but it can all happen in your head. I used to call myself the queen of self-loathing. I was so cruel to myself. And so it felt really weird and awkward when I first started using affirmations. I was like, this is BS. I am such a fraud. I can't believe I'm saying nice things about myself. But a slight twist I like to take on fake it till you make it is
Yes.
say it until you know it's true.
Aha.
And that to me is the power of those affirmations, those positive words, speaking lovingly to yourself. Eventually you start to believe yourself. It took a while because I had 40 years of
Mhm.
training my brain to
Mhm.
think that I sucked and I was
Mhm.
worthless. And you can't just undo that in an
Yeah.
instant, but eventually it started to become more powerful. Then you layer on top of that things like a daily gratitude practice. And then before you know it, you're seeing the bright side of things. You're finding money in the street.
Mhm.
Positive things are showing up in your life when you didn't expect it. And that positive energy piled on top of positive energy slowly raises your general feeling of goodness, happiness,
Yeah.
joy,
Yeah.
and then everything around you becomes better.
Absolutely. And like affirmations is something that I use daily as well. And I've got like my little ritual after the shower, I'll dry myself and I'll wrap the towel around me because like I had to do a lot of work around feeling safe and secure,
Mm-hmm.
especially as I was stepping into this new life of resigning from my day job and working in my business. I don't like to say full time because I don't want to work full time, but not living the life of freedom that I wanted. And so like I would wrap the towel around me like a warm hug and I would say my
Mm-hmm.
affirmations, I am safe, I am loved, I'm grounded. And I had like five or six that I said every morning. And then I added
Mm-hmm.
in, I am wealthy, I am abundant. And like probably this morning actually, the first time I actually felt like I truly believe that. And it's
Yes.
been it's been like about 4 or 5 weeks that I've been adding
Mm-hmm.
to my morning kind of
Yeah.
affirmations. And but it's true, it's like because like at one point I thought, is it is it okay just for me to just repeat these on autopilot? But
Mm-hmm.
it genuinely does work. It's like that it's now starting to kick in. Like, yeah, I am, and I could feel it. I could feel the fizz of energy in me. Like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
I am.
Yeah. Because you
And
are repeating so
yeah,
many things on autopilot. And I think mindfulness meditation was my gateway
yeah,
to witchcraft and the wider world of
yeah.
spirituality. But that whole idea of being able to be aware of the thoughts that are happening on autopilot,
Mhm.
for me, those thoughts before I started practicing intentionally with affirmations were very negative. So I was repeating thoughts to myself over and over and over again. They were not helpful.
Yeah, yeah,
So I was already doing that, but I wasn't doing it consciously. So affirmations just, again, gives you the power to choose a different thought.
yeah,
And it does take lots of repetition in order to make it stick.
yeah. Absolutely. And it also takes that bit of being conscious and that again coming back to the presence, but to kind of catch it when those thoughts and those
Mm-hmm.
beliefs and those old stories come in. And I'm a big lover of a reframe, a positive reframe. I'm
Mm-hmm.
always, the law of polarity, if this is true, the opposite is also true. So like
Mm-hmm.
when you can catch those limiting beliefs or those negative self-talk, I don't know what's the opposite of a negative an affirmation, a positive affirmation, a negative one.
Mm-hmm.
Like just flip the script. If I believe that this is true, that's not good, then the opposite has to be true as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's a universal law,
Yep.
and I think that's so important. And so I'm kind of I'm leaning into talking about the elements. So affirmations to me would be air because we're speaking it. Would
Mm-hmm.
that be
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
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 So, what are some other ways then we can incorporate earth, fire, and water into kind of our daily kind of magic practices?
Yeah, and there are so many ways to work with the elements. The ancients, especially the Greeks, loved to give everything an element. So, yeah, air practices would be things like affirmations, or, if you like singing, anything to do with the voice. Also, burning incense is air magic. But if you wanted to work with earth energy, you might want to get your hands in the dirt.
Mhm.
Or if your listeners have heard of the practice of earthing, this is taking off your shoes and socks and putting your feet in touch with the
Mhm.
actual ground.
Mhm.
Don't get frostbite,
Yeah.
but anything that helps you actually tangibly contact something that has come from the earth. But I also do a lot of kitchen witchcraft.
hmm
So, in addition to my tarot reading and my spiritual coaching, I also write the food blog Awesome on 20 Kitchen Magic, which is all about how to bring witchcraft into the kitchen. So, even if you're not somebody who likes to garden, or if you have a black thumb like me and you can't keep a plant alive, being more spiritual and conscious around the way that you're working with your food can really shift your vibration. And that's a very earthy
Yeah.
practice, kitchen witchcraft, for sure. Water magic includes things like bath and shower spells.
Mm-hmm.
If any of your listeners are bath people,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a bath person because
No,
I
no.
am all fires. We'll come to that momentarily, but you know, you are when you craft a bath spell, you are literally soaking in your intention. And when you are doing an energy cleanse in the shower, you know, you see your body getting clean, but you can also very easily visualize any harmful or stagnant energy literally washing from your body. Water practices also include anything that's associated with the moon and our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So, any like shadow work where you're going into your subconscious, any dream work where you may be like keeping a dream journal or something like that. Anything dealing with the emotional realm is going to come into play with water magic as well. But fire magic is my
Mm.
personal favorite. I am a Sagittarius sun, Leo moon, and Aries rising.
Oh, wow. Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, if anybody doesn't know, those are all three of the fire signs. And so I have a lot of fire energy in my chart. When I discovered that about myself, this going back to what I was talking about
Yeah.
earlier, I was like, oh,
Okay.
now I know why I'm like this. Now
Yeah.
I know why I can't sit still, why I need to do a million different things all at once. Fire energy is all about inspiration, motivation, taking action.
Mm-hmm.
So, anytime you are actively moving in the direction of your dreams, you
Yeah.
are working with fire energy. But tangibly, that looks like things like candle spells, which I
Mm-hmm.
love. Candle spells are so versatile and
Yeah.
so easy, and they can apply to anything. Um, you know, I love a good bonfire as well.
Mm-hmm.
So anything where you're working with heat or with fire
Yeah.
in a very practical sense, be safe. I
Yes.
always say there's no rules in witchcraft
Yeah.
except don't burn
Be
your house
safe.
down.
Yeah. Be safe.
But that having that flame to look at, like sometimes when I'm feeling demotivated, a simple spell, just light a candle,
Yeah.
any candle, and feeling that heat, seeing that
Mm-hmm.
flame brings back that motivation, that internal spark within me to keep going, to keep pushing through.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, and thank you for making it so kind of like accessible. Witchcraft isn't about having the black cauldron and all the herbs and like a lot of things. Like I work a lot with rosemary as well,
Mhm.
and the basil leaves, bay leaves, bay
Mhm.
leaves. But like the bit that I love about firework is like I love nothing better than writing things I want to release and just burning it, throwing it into the
Yes.
fire. It's so freeing. And I'm a Pisces sun, so like, but
Mhm.
I love being near water. I don't really like being in it. I don't know
Mhm.
what that's about. I love being near water, but yeah. So th that's like such magical ways that we can just like like even just a shower. And I do the energy cleanse when in the shower. Often like when I'm feeling a bit like stagnant, I'll just like imagine just the stuck energy kind of
Mhm.
washing away and going down the drain. So that really is like just some simple ways. And coming back to your food blog, please go and check that out. We'll share the links for everybody in the show notes. But like, I've tried some of your recipes and they're absolutely amazing. And I've
Oh,
had
thank you.
your I love your Biscoff cake. That
Oh,
was the first one that I
uh-huh.
tasted that you made. That was just like amazing. That's all about like abundance and using cinnamon. And again, that's something
Mhm.
that probably a lot of us have in our kitchens already. And it's just about using what you have around, as you said, like it just enhances the magic within you. I love that, the way that you said that. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, witchcraft doesn't need to be complicated, and you can make magic with the things that you already have in your home. If you want to go shopping and buy yourself fabulous things, and that is going to make you feel awesome, absolutely do that. But you don't need to have the stuff in
Yeah.
order to do the magic. You can look in your pantry, which is right behind me,
Mhm.
and you can find all sorts of things that will help to enhance the energy that you're looking for. It's so beautifully simple, right? This is a practice that has been passed down and transmuted from generation to generation, going back thousands and thousands of years.
To the dawn of time, I would imagine.
Yeah. So, we have access to magic all around us. And it doesn't have to be old stuff,
Mhm.
like old-timey, in
Yeah.
order to be magical as well. Like, one of the people in our community says that one of her favorite protection spells is to eat a bag of crisps because they have a lot of salt in them. Potatoes are grounding,
Uh-huh.
salt is protective. So
Uh-huh.
when she's feeling stressed out, crisps, that's a spell for protection and
Uh-huh.
grounding. Everything has its own energy.
Yeah.
Everything can be a spell.
Absolutely. And again, it's that, but like you and I were speaking about before we started recording, it's about your intention behind it. And it's
Mhm.
kind of like, again, it's about, like, it doesn't matter what you're using, it's your intention, like, because
Yes.
like I sometimes, like, every morning when I say, like, one of my affirmations is I am protected, I kind of just visualize this kind of like
Mhm.
shield of energy around me.
Mhm.
And, so like I'm not absorbing other people's negative energy,
Yes.
but, like that, if I, instead of using an affirmation, if I was eating the ready salted crisps,
Mhm.
that would be a way of me kind of like putting that shield, and
Yep.
that's that belief inside of you. So, what is one misconception around magic and witchcraft that you think you would like to debunk for our listeners?
Oh, that's a great question. And there are so many. I think probably the first thing that comes to mind for a lot of people is that witchcraft is scary. And to amp that up even more, a lot of people still think witchcraft is satanic.
Yes.
Witchcraft existed way before any of the modern religions that most people practice today.
Mhm.
You can be a witch and also be any other religion or no
Mhm.
religion at all.
Yeah.
Um, so most witches don't actually even really believe in Satan because
Mhm.
that is part of a specific religious tradition's mythology.
Yeah.
There are satanic witches out there, but most of us are not.
Yeah.
Most of us are working with the energies in nature,
Mhm.
and the energies within ourselves. Um, Also, 99% of the witches that I have met are using their energy to create positive things in their life and in the lives of others. Again, there are no rules in witchcraft, so people can use their magic for negative things if they want to. That's their choice. But in order to manifest your intention through a spell, you have to put a lot of energy into it.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I don't want to waste my time and energy on anger, on hate, on vengeance. I want to spend my energy on joy and fun and happiness. So I have no interest in doing baneful, harmful magic because it means I have to focus on what's hurting me. And I
Yeah.
would rather just release that
Yeah.
and move on with my life. Um, I think a lot of people are hesitant to try spells because they think that they might backfire. But the core of every spell is your intention.
Yeah.
So as long as you set a clear and loving intention, then your spell will have positive results. You mentioned earlier the principle of polarity. There's also the principle of cause and effect.
Yes.
So this just reminds us that all the actions we take have consequences. And as long as you're prepared to accept those consequences, then, you're making sure that your intentions are in alignment with your integrity. You should be good to go.
Yeah. 100%. And yeah, so we've mentioned law of polarity, law of cause and effect, but the law of attraction, which is kind of like a big one that's in mainstream, is, like what you put out, you attract back. And
Mhm.
and as you said, like if you're focusing your energy on the negative, on causing harm, I suppose is
Mhm.
what people would see it as, you're gonna attract that back to you. It's gonna boomerang right
Yeah.
back. And so you wouldn't want that, would you?
Yeah, people are like, can you hex my ex? And I was like, well, we could, but do you really want
Yeah.
to keep thinking about that person? Do you really want to keep stewing in that anger? What is that going to get you? How is that going to make your life better?
If anything, let's do I actually 2 weeks ago did my first cord cutting candle spell.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was like so amazing to watch how the whole thing, the whole it was a friendship and how it all played out, like how my candle was burning and how it was just
Hmm.
it was stunning. Like this is playing out exactly how the friendship played
Yeah.
out, and we've not had contact for over 20 years. And
Hmm.
how yeah, anyway, it was just, but yeah, so if you want to do anything with exes or friends or whatever, do that candle spell. It is fascinating.
Yeah, cord cutting, releasing. You can even do like a freezer spell if you want to kind of
Yeah,
keep them out of your life
yeah.
without necessarily having any harm come to them. You know, you've talked a couple times about spells that you've done and how great they felt. A spell is a physical representation
Yeah.
of our thoughts, right? So it all comes from our intention, but we can't see, feel,
Hmm.
smell, hear our thoughts, really. They're sort of invisible
Yeah.
vibrational energy. So the spells that we create give vision, give touch, give a tangibility to what we're feeling and what we desire. They're a metaphorical representation that brings our thoughts into the physical realm. And that's what makes them so powerful.
No, 100%. And yes, so I mean, again, we could talk about all these different things ad infinitum. Um, I'm just conscious of the time. So just shifting lanes ever so slightly. So this podcast is all about worth, but for me and kind of how I see what I do in life is about helping people find joy. So that's something that we can often overlook in everyday life. We can confuse happiness for joy. For me, happiness is something that's temporary
Mhm.
and sometimes tied to external circumstances, whereas joy is within, you spoke about this earlier. Once you start kind of building and layering on that joy, it just kind of starts expanding out into the world, into your environment, into your relationships. So what's kind of one simple way that you create joy in your life, and how can, is there anything that you can give advice to the listeners to start weaving more joy into their life as well?
Yes. So for me, it's about being in touch with my intuition and being aware of what I need and what I want on a daily basis. I used to be somebody who really deprived myself of the things that brought me happiness, and therefore my life didn't look very joyful because I was always like, oh, you can't do that, you can't have that. And that's not to say that I've become wildly extravagant, but I have relaxed a lot of my unrealistic expectations, and really started to feel into what's going to be good for me right now, and then give myself permission to move in the direction of whatever that thing is. And it changes from day to day, especially as somebody with a lot of fire in my chart. It's very changeable.
Mhm.
So it's not like every day I'm going to be doing this one thing, except for eating chocolate. But it's about listening to my body and to my higher self, and then saying yes to that and not denying
Mhm.
my own needs. You know, tapping into your intuition, again, is not something that happens overnight. It's like building your muscles. You
Yes.
have to practice it with a lot of care and intention in order for it to come more naturally to you. But once you begin to develop that relationship with your intuition and then you say yes to it as often as possible, joy is practically inevitable.
I love that. I love that so much. And it is just about that permission, isn't it? About kind of tapping into what's going to bring you joy in the moment. And,
Mhm.
I'll always say, as long as it's not going to intentionally harm anybody
Yeah.
else, you can never go wrong with that.
Hmm.
And that's it. But again, that was a big belief shift that I had to, mindset shift that I had to have as well. So,
Yeah, me too.
mhm. So thank you so much for sharing your story and insights, Renee. And one thing that really stood out for me was the bit that you said about, magic enhances sorry, that all the tools and resources that we use in witchcraft or whatever we do enhances our own magic within.
Hmm.
And I think that's such a key takeaway for me. So I'm sure that my listeners would want to know a lot more about what you do and connect with you and find your amazing recipes as well. So, what's the best place for people to find you and learn more about what you do?
Yeah. Well, I'm also a manifesting generator in human design, so I have a lot of stuff going on. If you're interested in recipes and witch tips, you can find my blog at awesomeon20, that's the numbers 20.com, or on Instagram at Renee_awesomeon20. I am also the creator and co-host of the Coven of Awesomeness podcast. So if you want to hear more witch chat, you can find that on your favorite podcast app. And then the other side of my work is Sagittarian Tarot. So the website is sagittariantarot.com, and I am at Sagittarian Tarot on Instagram. And that's where I offer tarot guidance. I do witchy workshops and events. I have a moon magic membership, and it's really allows me to use all different forms of witchcraft to help people live a more magical life.
Excellent. I love that. And having attended a couple of your workshops, they are truly magical. In fact, I've got my little bag that we made at you.
Oh,
It sits here beside
wonderful.
my desk. So I love that. So yeah, please go and check out everything that Renee does. It is truly magical. And yeah, connect with her, reach out to her, and I'm sure she'll have so much more to offer you as well. Thank you so
Okay.
much for tuning in to this episode of Your Worth Your Way. I know that you'll be walking away feeling inspired and ready to embrace your worth and prioritize your joy. If you love this episode, I'd be grateful if you could leave a review or share it with someone who needs a little bit of encouragement today. And don't forget to hit that follow button so you never miss another episode. You can connect with me, find out more about the podcast, my guests, and all the links, and what I do at debbielucas.me/links. And if you don't already, follow me on your favorite social media platform. I'd love to hear your thoughts and continue the conversation over there. And until next time, remember that you are worthy exactly as you are.